All right, Michelle, it's yours to call the meeting to order.
So I will call this meeting to order at, what time is it?
2:05.
2:05. And I have to start off the meeting with some very sad news. Susie Dittmeyers, our former member, passed away this weekend.
Oh, no.
So I don't have details. I know her husband was in a memory care unit in Chula, so I know he's taken care of. But I don't know the details of when and if there'll be a memorial service or a memorial to her life. I will definitely pass that on, but I guess we could start off with a combination. I do want to do a moment of silence, but if there's anyone that wants to say anything before we do that, that would, be appropriate at this time. So if you don't need to, you can just unmute for this. I don't think a lot of us, I mean, I knew her, Kay knew her, but I don't know how many people actually, had real contact with her. I knew her honestly more from Democratic circles, and and actually it's not true. I also knew her a lot from retiree circles. She was part of the California Alliance of Retired Americans. She was active in the Older Women's League. My experience of her was always that, she wanted to do good work at whatever stage of life she was in. She was also part of the senior, it's not called the Senior Caucus, maybe it is called that, but it's a group of seniors that every year go up to Sacramento for 1 week and work out legislation that they pass on to elected legislators, and that will help seniors. So it kind of starts off the new legislative year with legislators having the ability to, include this in their legislation packet. So I really appreciate her tenacity and her willingness to just keep putting herself out there to try to make a difference.
That's sad news, Michelle, but thank you for sharing it with us. Susie was a ferocious advocate of individuals with mobility issues, and what a loss to the community.
Yes, I'll say that when I became familiar with the committee, Susie was always one that she'd come in and really mince no words, and so she really would always say that, well, maybe I should be on the city's committee for persons with disabilities, because she had so many of the things that were in the city framework. But she was definitely this is really sad news, because she was a joy to talk to, and she was one that really was passionate about and spoke up when she saw opportunity. So thank you, Michelle, for sharing, and I'll look to see if we have any more details on services.
Right, and I will do the same. you actually bring up a good point. I'm going to make sure that Nathan knows, since he was the one who had initially appointed her. Actually, it was Rob Roberts. Is that what his name was? The supervisor before, Rob Roberts. He was the one who had originally appointed Susie, and then Nathan continued it. But I don't know if Nathan knows. Would anyone else like to say anything? If not, let's go into a moment of silence and our own thoughts before we continue with the meeting. I hope you find peace, Susie. So with that, were we beginning with introductions? You know, just a quick, I don't know if there's anyone else on the line from, oh, there will be, because we have speakers. Can I just do a quick introduction, self-introduction? So there are the speakers on yet?
Yes, we have Eileen Delaney and Andrew Strong are both here, and a few other guests today.
Andrew is always early. I love it.
How you doing?
Thank you for being on. We're gonna have you guys do the end of the speaking. Actually, I'll have Andrew do a very brief, just like we'll model good behavior for the beginning ones, and then you'll do a real one when you're actually speaking after Eileen. I love that you always want to learn. That's my limited experience with you thus far. So my name is Michelle Krug. I'm the newly elected chair for this committee. I actually gave my first announcement to a public group. I went to the Chula Vista Chamber of Commerce, what they call a First Friday breakfast, which they pushed to the second Friday because it was Labor Day weekend. And during the announcements, I said I should start telling people to go to our website, look us up, and use us as a resource for becoming more welcoming to the disabled community and more sensitive. And I got a really good response from that, because this is highly businesses or small local nonprofits. So I appointed through, well, actually, yeah, appointed through now. I'm trying to remember because it's switched, but I'm appointed through Nathan Fletcher, District 4, which now is my real district.
Oh, good.
Yeah, in redistricting, I guess switched into Nathan's from Norris. Is Rakina on or no?
No,
Not yet.
Not yet. So
she
maybe
might
we'll
be in the
refer-
classroom. She might be in the classroom, Michelle, because she didn't read the text message. It was delivered, but
Okay.
not read, so she's probably teaching.
So, Kay, do you want to go next as our newly former chair?
Sure, I am. I have to get used to saying Turpin. I am Kay Turpin, And I am the former chair and a District 2 appointee of Supervisor Anderson, and work at an organization that supports individuals with intellectual disabilities. And myself have 7 years of sobriety, and am happy to be on the committee and very excited that Michelle is chairing her first meeting.
You. Do you want to pick Kate? Since
Sure.
I can't. Yeah.
We'll just go across the board. Jeanette, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Jeanette White Shelton. I am representing Tara Lawson Raymer in District 3. I have a background in disability management counseling with the University of California and Kaiser. And I'm also very pleased to have Michelle starting out as chair.
Very nice. Jose, you're up.
Hi, everyone. So Jose here. And apologies for missing the past meetings. I've been super busy with cybersecurity related events. So it's a very hectic world. And unfortunately, I had to go out and do a couple of meet and greets for big events for SEMPRA. But anyway, I work in cybersecurity. I'm a threat intelligence analyst for SEMPRA. I am in District 1, appointed by Nora Vargas. I also teach for Arizona State University at their cybersecurity boot camp. And just eager and always willing to help in my community any way I can. So that's my little run up there.
Great, thank you. And Sherry?
Hi, this is Dr. Sherry Kanzi-Barra. I have my doctorate in educational leadership for change, and I'm the former regional director for a nonprofit organization that worked with adults with disabilities for 17 years, and also a former surveyor for CARF, which is Commissions on Accreditation for Rehabilitation Facilities.
Great. And Carolyn? Carolyn Smith?
Carolyn, can you hear us? She was
Yes,
having some audio challenges. There
she
we
is.
go.
Nope. There I am. Sorry, I was chatting with myself the whole time. Sorry about that. My name is Carolyn Smith, District 2 Anderson. I am a combat wounded veteran injured in a roadside bombing in Iraq. So I have a whole host of invisible disabilities. I'm the 2014 Veteran of the Year for the 71st District. I'm the author of an award-winning children's book that encourages kids in critical care to overcome their illness and injury. And I'm the director of 3 Paws Up, a veteran-owned nonprofit that gifts inspiring children's books written by veterans to kids in critical care. Just completed 4 years on the San Diego Military and Veterans Advisory Council, and I am 4th year in my PhD for a Doctor of Management for Homeland Security.
Very nice, thank you. And last but not least, Jessica.
Hi, everyone. I also want to say I'm so excited about starting our first meeting with Michelle as chair. And Kay, I just want to thank you so much for the incredible leadership that you have dedicated to our committee. I am District 5, Jim Desmond's appointee. I started a nonprofit in 2014 to help reform best practices with 911 law enforcement and paramedics in response to individuals with disabilities, but especially elder and dependent adults, which is the legal term. I would definitely like to use the term disabled adult or adults with disabilities, but that's not actually the legal term yet. So the legal term right now is still elder and dependent adults. But I'm working very hard at getting a countywide commitment to a universal best practices based elder and dependent adult policy for all law enforcement agencies in the county and hopefully state and nationwide.
Very nice, thank you. And Rakina is on. We're doing introductions.
Hello, I'm Rakina Kamei, and I am an at-large, but I live in District 2. And I'm sorry that I was late. I was in a work meeting that ran a little over.
Thank you. And then Michelle, we have several guests on. Do you want them to introduce themselves as well?
Yeah, I'm gonna start, if it's only Andrew and Elaine, I'll have Andrew, have Elaine do like a, and she'll and just follow. I realize that
I don't know if it's me, but
uh,
I feel like Michelle is breaking up a
just,
little bit.
Yeah, she is
I
breaking
can't
up.
hear her either.
Yeah.
is it just
Michelle,
Andrew and
you
Elaine?
may want to turn your video off, and that'll give you more bandwidth for audio, maybe. It sounded like you were having bandwidth challenges on audio.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Slightly, yes.
It
Okay,
still has your camera on. Your camera's still on.
Yeah, I'll turn, I will, okay. I just said if it's only Andrew and Elaine, let's have Andrew do a quick introduction, and then we'll have him do a real introduction when he starts his presentation in terms of more information.
We do have some other guests.
We can have them introduce themselves, sure.
So I'll be happy to go first then. My name is Andrew Strong. I'm the county's director of the Office of Equity and Racial Justice. Been at the county for about 15 years now, and prior to this role, I was chief of staff to our CAO. So I'll share some more about me once I get to my presentation. And how about I pass it over to, I see Natalia Bravo on the call.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Natalia Bravo. I'm the Chief of Staff to our CAO, Helen Robbins-Meyer, and I am just here to observe and be of service if you need anything at all from our office. And I will pass it over to, I'm sorry, because I don't know who hasn't gone yet, Eileen.
Thank you. So I'm Eileen Delaney, and I'm the chair of CLRB, also on the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. And I have to be quite honest with you, I did not know I was to do a presentation, so I'm going to wing it. So I ask for your patience. Thank you.
And then we have Tim Snyder.
Yeah, how you doing? I'm the chair of the Spring Valley Community Planning Group, and the planning groups in the county work with planning and development services as far as land use and planning, businesses, residences, streets, sidewalks, curbs, etc. And I'm very interested in your group. I'm just here, just listening today, and see what you're all about, and see if maybe there's some connection between what you do and what you can affect and what we do as planning groups. Thank you.
Thank you. And then it looks like we have Lynn Setzler.
So I'm Lynn Setzler. I'm the supervising special investigator with the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board, and I'm here to support Eileen Delaney as our chairperson.
And it looks like that covers everybody, Michelle.
Thank you. So it's a really easy going. Eileen, you're gonna be fine. Just tell us what CLRB is, if you want to add something more you're interested about who you are and why you were interested and invested.
Okay, if you'd like me to begin, I can.
What that means to you, and then what CLRB does.
Okay, so as I said, I'm Eileen Delaney. I'm also the chair of the Fallbrook Community Planning Group. So hi, Tim. The Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board, our mission is to increase public confidence and accountability of peace officers employed by the Sheriff's Department or the Probation Department by conducting independent, and that's really important, independent thorough, timely, and impartial reviews of complaints of misconduct and deaths and other specified incidents arising out of or in connection with actions of peace officers. Those are the sworn officers. We also investigate use of great bodily injury, use of force, and deaths. Those do not need to have a complaint filed by anyone. Those are automatically investigated by our wonderful investigators, who Lynn is the supervising investigator. We meet once a month. We have our each complaint or each case is reviewed by an investigator, then reviewed by Lynn and the whole group, and then comes to us with their recommendations of whether they want to sustain the findings or they're not sustained. And they do a thorough investigation. And I'd love Lynn to give you a little bit of background about what our investigators do. Lynn, I hate to put you on the spot, but would you share a little bit about what you professionals do?
Certainly, we will accept any complaint of misconduct by telephone, by in writing. We'll anyone that comes to the office will go out in the field to obtain a signed statement, because that's what our rules require. In order for us to act on a complaint, we have to have a statement signed under penalty of perjury. And at that point, once we have that, we can proceed with an investigation. We have a liaison at the sheriff and the probation departments that are designated to provide the documents that we request from them. And the investigators also independently verify that information and evidence that we receive from the respective departments. We contact witnesses, anyone else that's somehow involved with the incident that occurred. And we review all the policy and procedures that are in place at the time of the incident. We review case law, any ordinances that may apply, and we write a very comprehensive report to be reviewed by our volunteer board members. We have the ability to, we are advisory only. We don't have the ability to impose any type of discipline. However, our full investigative reports go up the chain of command at the sheriff's department and the probation department for review. And if it's a sustained finding, meaning that we found evidence of a policy violation, the departments will automatically open their own internal investigations to address that, and they have the ability to impose discipline at that point. We also have the right to make policy recommendations if we see something maybe that doesn't correlate to state law or something like that, or something that's lacking or missing. Our policy recommendations are only to strengthen what's in place with the respective departments. That's it in a nutshell, but I'm happy to answer any more specific questions.
Thanks, Lynn. Another thing that we do is we do detention center inspections. You probably, are you hearing me okay? Because I just came up that my internet connection is a little bit unstable. The weather here isn't the best.
You sound fine.
Okay, great. So we do detention center inspections. We haven't started them up yet because of COVID, but we'll be looking at several different aspects. I know that a lot of the deaths in custody have been in the news. We're very concerned about that. Our executive officer, Mr. Parker, has prioritized any deaths in custody. And quite often board members will review body worn cameras for different deaths or other incidents to give us a better idea, just rather than just the one-dimensional writing of what happened in the reports. So we're working very diligently on the deaths in custody. We've had several reports that we've initiated to find out what's causing it, and the drugs in the detention centers as well. One of the things we're working on now is to get oversight on medical, because a lot of the deaths in custody or injuries or whatever are because of medical issues for whatever reason. And we don't have oversight on that. So we're not getting a clear picture of what's going on. So we're working with the board of supervisors and others to see if we can get that oversight, and it will give us much clearer picture of what's going on. I joined CLRB because I feel that it's extremely important that we have unbiased, impartial, independent thinkers that are on there that can listen to both sides, read about it, and make the decision based on impartiality. And that's for the good, not only for the public, but also for the sheriff's deputies that have difficult jobs. And they certainly don't want to be working with somebody that doesn't follow policy. So that's it as well. If you have any questions for Lynn and I, please feel free.
So Lynn, thank you for coming on. You and I did speak briefly. And didn't the CLRB board go through like a changeover fairly recently, like gaining more authority than it initially had, or am I wrong?
We've always had, we've always been advisory only. We've always had 11 board members. We've been without 3 positions for over a year now, but there have been some changes in personnel, board members that had either that resigned or that the Board of Supervisors did not reappoint. And we are still working on filling 1 vacancy, I believe.
But we've also, over the last couple of years, the use of force and great bodily injury during a protest or whatever, that's not something that we ever, it's something now that we can investigate without a complaint. So maybe that's what you're referring to as well. We were able to get more oversight with some of those things.
Yeah, there's been several changes to our rules and regulations that have allowed us to do things that we had not done in the past.
Because I know CLRB has been around for a long time, but I did think that there were changes that recently happened in terms of the established office. So I think it's Paul Parker. How long has he been the executive director?
He's been here for almost 2 years now, actually a year and a half, and he's made incredible strides. He's wonderful. Can't say enough about him. He's very accessible. If you ever have any questions, the public or you can always call him. Lynn, I think you enjoy working with him.
He has been a phenomenal leader for our group and has pushed CLRB further than any other prior executive officer. I've been with this organization for almost 25 years, a little probably over. But we've had several different executive officers and we haven't really had a lot of, let's say, support from the Board of Supervisors until recently. We've always had a very good working relationship with the different departments. However, we just didn't have a lot of support. And now that they are giving us the additional staffing that we need and require and have told us, please let us know anything else that you may need. And he's assessing that and going back to them with that information.
So I'll just quickly tell you where this came from. Was that we had asked to speak to the sheriff's department, which we're continuing to do, and we had an unsatisfactory experience. I think I can in general say that, at least from our follow-up meeting. Basically, questions that we asked were definitely unanswered, and actually a lot of it was that the commanders, there were 3 commanders there and 1 captain, and they were unaware of even some very basic disability. Well, basic disability equipment, like a Hoya lift, basic things like the take me home, policy, just several things that made us very concerned that they were not aware. And one of the questions was about the deaths in the jails. And they were just, oh, well, we can't talk about that. And I'd actually done my homework beforehand, talked to county council. There's no reason that they couldn't. The question was, with the deaths in the jails, what changes in your protocols have you done? So I wasn't asking anything about legal anything. It was specifically asking, what are you doing differently to help prevent this moving forward? Pretty benign question in my opinion, but they wouldn't answer it or shied away from it. So we just are frustrated. And then at one point they said, oh, well, that's the front of the sheriff's department. They'll have to talk to the people that actually like do the arrests and, talk to people directly. And so anyway, that was why we thought before we have our second meeting, if we were able to, we should reach out. Todd had the idea that we should reach out to Club, and I thought that's, can't be anything but positive if we get more information. So we wanted to have an idea of, what you are able to do. Well, we have many concerns, like just as regular citizens, but we specifically asked questions about how disabled people are assessed and dealt with in the jails. Like the whole issues around not allowing service animals, the issue about not, and I know you wouldn't have any authority over those, but these are things that potentially are leading to deaths. And if you're not going to allow something, what are you doing to compensate for that?
If I may interject for just a second, they have a new assistant sheriff, Adams, and I just can't think of her. She's a hyphenated name, and I cannot think of the first part of it. But anyway,
Teresa?
Teresa, yes, and she has oversight on the detention centers, and I think it might be something that you should invite her to one of your meetings. She's very open, accessible again, and I think she's going to make some really important changes. So I would suggest that you invite her to your next meeting.
Actually, Eileen,
Yes.
she was our contact
Oh,
for that meeting, and they actually did have some other. She had some delegates to present.
Well,
what I will
that's what
say,
I just said then.
what I will say is that Mr. Parker is very progressive, and he wants to focus on things that the community is concerned about. So if you attend our board meeting and tell him that there are issues, that he and the board can decide if they need to take action on that and do something about that, as long as it's within our purview to do so.
And again, that's of the utmost importance for us right now are the deaths in custody. Why are they happening? What can be done to change the strategic, what's going on, and what is causing them?
And why isn't the sheriff's department sharing with the community if anything has happened? If any protocol changes have happened. They had 3 commanders, and 1 captain. And for them not to be able to give us any information on that or about, anyway, I do want to open it up. I do want to open it up to the rest of the committee, because our committee had a lot of questions for them. Are there things that you can see that might bridge, with CLRB, either to just share this information, with Eileen and Lynn, or if there's specific questions that you have about CLRB, please raise your hand and have Katie or Kay call on you.
Jessica has her hand up.
Jessica, go. Jessica, are you unmuted?
Coming. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you sound like you're
Okay,
coming in.
great. I was getting stuck in the unmute. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the comments made so far and really appreciate kind of a fresh look at this situation. One of the things that I'm hearing a lot is the emphasis and the priority on deaths in custody. I really want to also hear about the priority of officers responding to persons with disabilities on the streets and prior to the booking and custody part of the interaction. My personal and professional experience, I do a lot of specialized disability advocacy for persons experiencing homelessness. And we have had a cascade of deaths at the hands of sheriffs for persons with disabilities, for instance, hearing and speech disabilities. And it's very concerning. I think we've learned enough by now to be able to say that the Sheriff's Department has not made a commitment and is not as fully in compliant in the Americans with Disabilities Act and the California Unruh and Disabled Persons Acts, in which when a person has a response on the streets or in their homes and asks for a Americans with Disabilities Act accommodation or requires one, the officers are not trained in how to facilitate that on the spot. And so what I'm really looking to hear as part of this conversation and part of CLRB's priorities is that we're really addressing the proper responses in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act when it comes to patrol and street and at-home responses. Maybe one of you guys could give me the proper language for that. I'm not sure exactly what it's called from the sheriff's or the CLRB's perspective. The responses that happen outside of the booking and detention centers. So if anybody wants to advise me on the proper language for that, then I can use it moving forward. And the second question I have is, in terms of misconduct, are we considering disability civil rights violations to be misconduct in the context of this conversation? Because sometimes an officer doesn't have to lay hands on or lay a weapon on a person with a disability, but just by the mere deniance of the accommodation can cause significant physical, medical, and psychological injury to an individual. And so I'd like to know if misconduct includes disability civil rights violations or lack of accommodating persons with disabilities. And this includes the sheriff's ability to qualify an individual as an elder or dependent adult. I guess elder's easier because that goes by age, but the legislature and the policies are, like, for instance, policy Penal Code 368, which is abuse against persons with disabilities, elders, and dependent adults. And the sheriffs do not have a qualifier list. So one of the qualifiers that they've been trained to use is if a person is part of the regional center. In order to be part of the regional center, you have to have a developmental disability that was present or diagnosed before the age of 18. So that really isn't covering the large spectrum of persons with disabilities who may qualify as a dependent adult. And if officers do not know how to qualify a dependent adult and they're making decisions on the spot to not qualify the person as a dependent adult, or don't have the checklist or the training to qualify someone appropriately, then they're not going to be able to apply the full protections of the law for that individual. And so I'd like to know if you guys are including disability accommodations and civil rights disability violations as misconduct, and if you guys are willing to take reports and do your investigations on those types of violations. And yes, if somebody could please give me the proper term for the response that is not in custody. Thank you.
Lynn, as an investigator, do you want to tackle this one?
Tackle the second part of it. So Jessica, we would take a complaint and investigate any allegations brought forth by anyone that was arrested or contacted or mistreated by any sworn member of the Sheriff's Department or Probation Department. So however they bring that information forth to us and tell us that they were discriminated against, we would certainly investigate those specific allegations. Now, in order to proceed with the investigation, we would have to apply, the policy in place, or if there is lack thereof, then we would make that policy recommendation for the department to implement. Does that make sense?
Yes. Is there a statute of limitations on these complaints?
Yes, we only have the ability to go back 1 year from the date of the incident giving rise to the complaint. So anything that has occurred within the past year, there's only 2 exemptions by our rules. If the person is incarcerated, that time does not count against them, or if they are mentally or physically incapacitated from filing a complaint, then they would need a qualified provider to attest that their disability kept them from filing a complaint. But we are working on changing our rules in accordance with POBAR, Peace Officer Bill of Rights statutes that apply to that. It's our rules that limit us, and we're trying to expand on that.
Okay, thank you so much. Do any of you guys know what it's called when officers are responding to people and it's not an in custody? Do we have like a term for that?
Are you talking?
Jessica, that would be
Detaining?
the Law Enforcement Services Bureau, right, Lynn?
So you're talking just like a contact or a detention, but not an actual arrest? Is that what you're referencing?
I'm just like, so when we say deaths in custody, we know that that means that the person's in custody. What are we talking about when it's not in custody?
I believe it's detaining.
Right. So a law enforcement person can contact anyone on the street. If that person walks away and doesn't engage with them, there's no legal right to stop them unless there's a connection to some type of criminal activity. Then that would be the officer has the right to question a person based upon they have to somehow determine that there is no criminal activity and allow them to leave, or that there's further information that's needed, and then they could only detain them for a certain period of time, which then turns into an arrest type of situation.
Yeah. I'm also
So would that
referring just to like when somebody calls the sheriffs for help and the sheriffs come and there's a sheriff response. What if I'm just looking for an easy way to describe it, since we have deaths in custody as an easy descriptive term. I'm just, instead of just saying like, oh, when the sheriffs respond on the streets or in a person's home, I was just wondering if we could come up with a concise way to say that. For instance, saying we have a priority for deaths in custody. I'd like us to also have a priority for everything that's not a death in custody.
I think you could probably just utilize law enforcement contact.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so very much. Really, really appreciate you guys.
You're welcome.
And I want you to know everything is a priority. Don't get me wrong there. It's just that deaths seem to have a little bit of a higher priority. But you're absolutely right in everything that you said. Those are very important points, and we struggle with some of the actions that take place occasionally.
Thank you.
Well, like Earl McNeil didn't happen in jail, but it definitely happened in being detained. The Earl McNeil death.
Right, and that was a different law enforcement agency. There was a little contact with the sheriff's department, and that's why we were involved in that. But in order for us to do a complete investigation, it requires that it be a sworn member of the sheriff's department or the probation department.
Or Alonzo in, I forgot his last name, in El Cajon, those areas. We're just looking for how do we incorporate, looking at all of those, but maybe those aren't being considered as part of what you're investigating.
Right, and I believe that one again was the El Cajon Police Department that initiated that contact. But we do look at those, and we use those cases as examples for our own investigators to learn from them. Any cases that are sensationalized or media attention that we can learn from, we do that so that we know it's just a matter of time until it comes to our doorstep as well.
So those would, even though those are cities that contract with the sheriff's department, well, not a national city, but they don't have their own jails. None of them have their
No.
own jail.
Correct.
So-
The sheriff's department has their own detention centers, or has the detention centers for the cities in San Diego.
But every law enforcement agency in San Diego, other than, San Diego Police Department, El Cajon Police Department, National City Police Department, Carlsbad Police Department, those are all separate entities. However,
Correct.
once they arrest someone and take them for booking, at that point, it turns into the sheriff's department, because the sheriff is oversees all the detention facilities. The local detention facilities. There are, RJ Donovan Prison, that's by the California State Prisons. And
Yeah.
there's also a federal correction center downtown that's operated outside the sheriff's authority.
Okay, committee, I know you have questions.
Well, on my screen, I see, I'm not going to say your name right.
Rakina,
Rakina.
yes. So my question is, or not even my question, more my statement is that I think that looking at some of the concerns that this committee had, I think that might answer some of your questions about death while in custody. Because as you said, a lot of them are connected to illnesses and things like that. And so probably I would just assume from what we heard in our meeting that some of that might be the lack of familiarity with different disabilities and medical conditions, that maybe officers are not really aware of a lot of things that could be going on with the person, and so maybe they think the person is playing crazy, or sometimes if a person has certain illnesses, they're disoriented. They're not really playing a game with you, but if you don't know what to look for, then you might think, oh, they're just playing with us. They're putting on a show, when that in fact they're having symptoms of a medical condition and really need help. I was just hearing about a case where a woman had a burst appendicitis, or not a burst appendicitis, a burst bladder, and ended up getting not in custody, but she ended up getting an infection and all these things, but she was at a party drinking. So they just assumed she drank too much. That's why she's in pain and she's acting sick and she's throwing up, when actually she was really experiencing a very, very serious medical condition. And it didn't get treated, and consequently she died. So, I mean, I think that could be the type of thing that they're seeing with people in custody and just not realizing it. And so through that inaction, people die.
That's certainly been the case, and I'm thinking of one particular incident with a young man up in North County that had Down syndrome. He was very high functioning. He had just left his parents' bakery, and he had a hoodie on, so he fit the profile of a suspicious person and was stopped. And because he was he wasn't communicating with the deputies questioning of him, he was there was a use of force involved, and he was very much injured. And there was so much outrage by the community, lots of media report on it, and there was several people that contacted us, and we opened a complaint based upon no one that was involved with them firsthand. This was just the community was upset by it. Someone agreed to file a complaint with us, sign a statement based upon the media reports, and we opened an investigation. So we have the ability to do that. Anyone can file a complaint on behalf of anyone else. They don't have to have firsthand knowledge. They can read about it in the paper. They can be outraged by it because of, especially all of your skill sets and knowing what constitutes, someone with a disability that is being unfairly treated, and file the complaint on their behalf, and we would gladly investigate that.
I just wanted to, this is Todd Hood, wanted to say that I'm sure that the committee is seeing great value in this discussion, as well as future discussions. Just from a time standpoint, Michelle, we are 5 to 3.
Okay. Thank you, Tosh.
And Michelle, it's Kay here. I'm gonna sign off at 3:30. So if you want to do any business items like approve the minutes, we should probably take care of that before we lose a quorum.
Okay. Although I think we'll have a quorum even if we lose one person, right?
Yep, it looks like we will.
But yeah,
I'm also have to leave at 3:30. I have school.
okay. Is that, who is that speaking?
I'm sorry, Michelle, that's Carolyn.
Okay. Okay, so do we have any further thoughts, questions? I'm so we can reconnect with Elaine and Lynn, and Paul wanted to be able to be here but was just unavailable for today. It was very last minute notice, and I'm grateful that Elaine and Lynn did make it. Are there any other thoughts?
No, I would just like to thank you for having us, and I'd be happy to come back. If you had questions that you wanted me to get answers to, I can certainly come back. If you want to shoot me an email, or Lynn or Mr. Parker, and we can try to get answers for you. And you're always welcome to attend our meetings as well, and ask us questions. Collaboration is a beautiful thing, isn't it? Get a lot done that way. So please feel free.
And by the way, we did see the recording for the annual report that was delivered and the semi-annual report. So that recording is available for the committee. I'm not certain if the committee has been able to review that, but there were some great topics that that might be generated from those that delivery.
Yeah, that was my bad. I should have said that at the very beginning. Todd found that, he sent it to me. I asked him to send it out to the entire committee. I should have followed up individually with phone calls just to make sure you guys noticed it. But there is the recording of of their report, and that definitely would be good prep. It'll still be good prep before we have our next meeting with the sheriff's department. But any other going once, going twice, any other?
Yeah, this
questions?
is Carolyn. I do have a question. And this is directed towards the club folks. Is there an opportunity, in your opinion, to explore maybe training opportunities on the parole side? Because I think the parole side definitely has, for the most part, a calmer interaction with parolees. So would you feel as though that could expand some sort of synergistic effort between persons with disabilities and maybe creating those documents that are the target list or the explanation list or whatever the name is going to be through the interactions with parolees?
I just want to say there's two different things. Parole is state, so we only do probation. So there's probationers, which is local. So I don't want to confuse those two issues.
Okay, great. Thanks for some reason I was thinking more regionally, but so probation, I haven't had the luxury of being incarcerated, but luxury, sorry, wrong word. But with the parole, is that still an opportunity for training because the environment again is a little bit less chaotic? It's a relatively safer interaction.
Do you mean probation?
You mean you meant probation, right?
Sorry. I have a brain injury, so sometimes things will not participate in the right way. Yes, probation. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. And probation, their whole focus is on rehabilitation. So they want to make sure that these these people do not reoffend, or that they provide a skill set to them so that they are productive members of the community. So that this is a whole new approach of the probation department that's been instituted, I would say, within the last decade or so. So their focus really is on training and working with everyone involved to make sure that they're successful in being rehabilitated into the community.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think my thought is more, again, in the synergistic side, where even through the rehab and skill process and stuff like that, you know, part and parcel of the paperwork that's generated could lend information to the sheriff's department or to your organization about the disabilities that they come across while they're going through the rehabilitation. I think it would give you a good subsection of the population within the jail system, because that's where that's where they came from. So I'm just wondering if there is if there is some sort of opportunity there for those on probation to clarify disabilities, and then that information be funneled to where it needs to go, so that you can get a good synopsis of what the disabilities are, especially unseen disabilities. And it may be a good possibility or opportunity to harvest that information and use that information for the benefit of, for example, this committee.
I think that's a great idea. And to be quite honest, the probation department constitutes such a low number of our investigations. We just don't have a lot of complaints in that area. But we can certainly look into that to see, I'm sure they would be more than willing to be open to the idea of learning from organizations like yours so that they can do better.
Thank you.
Anyone else with their hand up? Katie, Todd, anyone else with their hands up?
Not right now.
Okay. Thank you so much, Elaine. Elaine and Lynn.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and we definitely look forward to keeping the connection going. And I'm sure we'll come up with more questions. We always do.
Thank you. Anytime.
So be aware of that. I'm going to go ahead and try for like 5 minutes or 3 minutes to see if we can get through what the other business. As Kay had suggested, I know we have minutes to do. And what else was there, Katie? Is it minutes basically to be passed?
Yes, there are, we need to do a vote on the August meeting minutes. And then I had listed at the end of the meeting that we need to discuss scheduling for the November meeting, because there's a conflict with Veterans Day and the end.
Got it. Let's try to do
This
those
is Jessica. I also have a committee concern that I would like to bring up before the end of the meeting.
Yes, we also haven't not done non-agenda comments yet.
Thank you.
So let's do the business before we lose some of the quorum. And the minutes should be non-controversial, I think. Has everyone had a chance to check out the August minutes from our illustrious secretary, Katie?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay,
I make a motion. This is Carolyn. I make a motion to approve minutes.
Second, Jessica.
Okay. Is there any opposition to approving the minutes? Going once, going twice, any opposition to approving the minutes? Okay, by acclamation, we have approved the August minutes. The other two voting things that actually I do want to make sure people are on for are the change of the November meeting. Not because that's controversial, but just when we're going to do it. And then the other one is let's go ahead and do the 30-day reapproval of the continuing the teleconferencing.
I move that we approve a resolution authorizing continuance of the teleconference public meeting pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E.
I second.
It's Carolyn, I second.
Any opposition to approving the teleconferencing continuance? Any opposition? Last call, any opposition? Then it is by acclamation that that is approved. Okay, so then the last thing that really is that we need to do as business, I believe, correct me if I'm missing something, is the changing the meeting date for November because it comes out on Veterans Day. It's collecting garbage a lot on my street this week, but I wanted to make sure I kept the wireless going. Okay, so November 11th would normally be our meeting. It's obviously Veterans Day. When do we want to hold our meeting for just November? Do we want to do it perhaps the first week, perhaps the third week? I don't know where the third week lies in terms of Thanksgiving. Does the first Friday work for people for that one time?
The first Friday is the 4th of November. It works good for me.
Works good
Works
for
fine
me.
for me.
Anybody?
Same here.
Cool. And Todd and Katie, they're kind of important.
No conflict for me.
And Todd, you're good?
I'm available, yes.
Okay, is there any objection or anybody who's not able to do the 4th? Any objection to doing it on November 4th? Okay, going once, going twice. Last call for objections to changing our November meeting from November 11th to November 4th. No objections, then I think we've just done it with acclamation. Thank you. That's important to get through before we lose quorum.
The other scheduling item that I wanted to bring up is the ethics training that I sent out. It does require 2 hours of time. So I don't know if you all want to do that during a regularly scheduled meeting or if you would like to do a special meeting for that training.
Or to do it independently and individually. You can do it online.
I like that
Carolyn.
idea.
I love the idea, but I have a funny sort of question. So I clicked the link and I did what I needed to do, took my ethics training, but at the bottom, it's for my Lakeside Community Planning Group position. So does that mean I have to do that all over again?
No, that would count.
And it auto-populated. That would count? Okay.
That would
Then
count.
I'm gonna send my ethics. I'll send my ethics through. I'm done.
You're allowed to do it a second time if you want to. Is there a feeling from the committee that it might be valuable to do it as a group? Then we can deal with the question of how should that happen? as a
Michelle.
group. Yes.
Michelle, it's Carolyn. The only reason why I'd say do it individually because all of us are on and have been on a plethora of boards, and I think, including yourself, we've done these ethics trainings for 5 to 10 years, and so I don't think there's going to be value by taking those 2 hours up. So my opinion, just one, I would rather do it individually.
Michelle, it's Kay. I concur. I would prefer to do it individually.
Okay, and the rest of the committee, because that suggestion came from the committee. I hear with you now.
Yes, I would also agree. I think individually is best because, tell me if I'm wrong, but it can be semi-self-paced, correct? Like I can start it and stop it when I'm ready?
Yes.
Yes, this is Jessica. I prefer that option as well. And one of my committee business questions / concerns is around the mandate for this ethics committee. And so I don't know if now would be an appropriate time or if it's better to wait until non-agenda.
You mean just the idea, what do you mean about the idea of there being an ethics committee?
No, the fact that I'm mandated to one because I am reimbursable public official, and thus that brought up many questions about being a reimbursable city official, or I can't remember exactly how it was worded. Not city official, but public official, my bad.
Let's do that under the non-agenda, just so we can get
sounds
through
good.
this before, and get started with the next presentation. So I'm not keeping Andrew too
Okay.
long.
Perfect. Thank you.
So are there other, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 opinions. I'm either way. I do feel like it came from somebody, that was brought up, and that's the reason that Katie had the question on. I don't know if Jose had weighed in, or if Janet had weighed in, or Sherry.
Previously, there was a request to have county staff provide the training rather than doing it through the online method.
Right, and that's why I'm wondering if people had a reason to feel like that the county staff that they would be able to take it in easier if it was actually done as part of one of our meetings or as the meeting itself, because it is a 2-hour training. Or, I mean, there was a reason, and I'm just trying to make sure I don't.
If I recall correctly, I believe Kay had asked for the county staff to provide it, but it sounds like she is also comfortable doing it individually. Kay, correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't remember that, but I probably did.
I remember it being Kay as you wanting to have us sort of guided towards it as opposed to kind of going out and having to do it on our own, figuring out how to do it on our own. That's kind of my recollection.
Yeah, what we did in the past, it wasn't, I don't know if it was called ethics training, but we were required to go through the Brown Act training.
Oh, that was separate.
Yeah, which did not include the fiscal component of reimbursement. So it would be helpful. I'm not even sure what the process is to request reimbursement, but whatever it is that the group decides, it would also be helpful. I'm hoping that part of this training will allow us to learn how to submit for reimbursement, because I don't know that we've had any of that orientation either.
It actually, so as far as reimbursement, we've gotten more clarification. So if there were activities that the committee had determined that they needed to participate in, or to if you had materials that you needed to purchase in order for brochures or any type of, those are reimbursable expenses. And it's really more, and instead of, it's not for the purpose of an individual's reimbursement, but it's for the purposes of something that the committee had determined that they would take on. And then if an individual paid for that out of their funds, that would be reimbursable. And yes, go ahead.
In the case that we went to, well, this is so funny because we were required to either meet in person, or we had to give Michelle's address out to the public if she were calling in from her home, which posed a whole host of safety concerns for us. But according to the attorneys at the county, that's how the Brown Act compliance was explained to us. nonetheless, COVID hit and a lot of that has changed. But we did go on several site visits to the train station, and there were costs involved for some of the disabled members to use public transportation services. Would something like that be eligible for reimbursement?
So I think you're talking about the visit to the MTS, to the train station?
Correct.
Yeah, so it really would be more of initiatives that, so if you needed to have materials that that needed to be generated, or for if there was an initiative that the committee had said, oh, we'll need to, I'm glad to present anything that you all will propose, but so let's leave it at that. If you have something that, if the committee has something that they're proposing to do and it's going to be an expense, let's pull together an estimate of that expense, and then let me and Kate send that for request for approval.
Got it.
We're having the conversation now, so
I
do
know.
we still want me to wait until non-agenda items to speak, or should
Go
I
ahead.
speak
That's-
now?
My concern honestly is that we have a
Fine.
speaker waiting who was.
I'm happy
full-
to wait, but this, essentially,
I
we're
know.
having the conversation. Yeah, so I'm still happy to wait if that's in the best interest of the committee and the speakers, so I'll just wait and we'll pick it back up.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just want
I
to
don't mind.
get, thank you, Jessica. Because I think I know where you're going to go with it, and I just want to get on to the next thing. Is there anything else, Katie, that's kind of needs, should be done before? So it sounds like the will of the committee. Jose, I didn't hear from you. Are you good with doing it individually?
Yes, I kind of agree with that. It just gives everyone more flexibility.
Okay, and Jeanette? Is she still
Yes,
on?
I'm fine. I'm fine either way.
Okay. Am I missing Sherry? Was Sherry on? What did Sherry say about it?
I'm here, and yeah, I'm fine either way. Thanks for thinking about the whole committee.
Okay, so it feels like doing it individually works. It's probably less complicated than setting up a separate meeting. When Katie mentioned that to me, I wanted to make sure that nobody felt that it's going to be a hardship to take it in as well without having it actually presented. Because, like kids in class, some of them do much better in class. Some are okay with the online training. So unless there's any objection, we'll just do it individually. Do I hear any objections to us as a committee just doing it individually, the ethics training? Going once, twice. Any objections to our committee doing our ethics training individually? Nope, then that's our decision on it. Anything else, Katie?
Not on that item.
Thank
All voting
you.
items are done.
I'm sorry, Andrew. I know I counted and smiled at you being able to get on earlier. And so I hope you're okay with this. And I would love you to do a real introduction and tell us what your work is nowadays, because it changed from when I first met you.
No problem. It is a change from when you first met me. But I think when we met, I was chief of staff back in the day. But thanks for allowing me to present. I do have a presentation, and for folks who can't see the screen, I will definitely read as much as I can off the presentation for you and tell you what's on the slides. But just a little bit about me. I'm originally from Shreveport, Bossier City, Louisiana. I joined the Navy when I was 18. Spent 9 years in the Navy as a hospital corpsman. Got out in 2007. Started at the county as a non-paid student worker when I was getting out of the Navy, and I've been in multiple different departments since I came into the county, starting off in human resources, did training and development for 4.5 years. And then when I left there, I went to be what they call a staff officer in the Finance and General Government Group for the chief operating officer or the chief financial officer at the time, Don Stoyer. I left there and I was a chief in support services for planning and development services. I did that for 18 months. And then after that, I was appointed to be chief of staff to our CAO. So I did that for 5 years. And then this position came up in the wake of 2020. And I'll talk a little bit about how this office was created in a minute. But the office was created in 2020, and I had to go through a community-led interview process. That's a nationwide search for this position. I decided to throw my name in the hat, and I ended up getting it. So honored to be in the role, and I think we have opportunity for some significant change in our county government, and we're excited about it. So with that being said, it's a little bit about me. I do want to get started with the presentation. I guess it's the trainer in me. We're talking a little bit about definitions of the work, right? To kind of ground us in the equity and racial justice work that we do. So we talk about equality. So equality, the definition of equality is the state of affairs in which all individuals within a specific society have equal rights, liberties, and status, possibly including civil rights, freedom of expression, autonomy, and equal access to certain public goods and social services. Now, equality is good, but it also doesn't necessarily address some root causes and systemic and structural issues, right? And I don't think I have to tell you all this, that equality assumes that everybody needs the same thing, right? To be successful, and equal access is key. And the truth of the matter is equity is needed in a lot of places, and equity is something that's a little different. So what is equity? So equity is fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all, while striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some groups. The principle of equity acknowledges that there are underserved and underrepresented populations, and equity means increasing diversity by improving conditions of disadvantaged groups. And I think this next statement is the key. Equity acknowledges and considers differences, disparities, and disproportionality to ensure a fair process and outcome. A lot of people say, I don't see race, or I don't see disability, or I don't see your veteran status because I want to treat you equally and fairly. But honestly, you have to see those things and acknowledge those things to understand what the impacts of those things are on our society, and how our society has impacted those folks, and how structures have been built over time in centuries and decades, right? That impact those folks in those different intersectionalities. So once you understand all those things, then you get to do something about it, right? So our office is not the office of equality, we're the office of equity and racial justice, right? So racial justice is the doing something part about it. So racial justice is the systemic and fair treatment of all people of all races, resulting in equal and equitable opportunities and outcomes for all. Racial justice or racial equity goes beyond anti-racism, which is being actively fighting against racism. It is not just the absence of discrimination and inequities, but also the presence of deliberate systems and supports to achieve and sustain racial equity through proactive and preventative measures. So it's actually deliberately building systems and structures, right, that break down those old things, systems and structures that perpetuated those negative stereotypes and negative impacts on us as people and society, but also being proactive and developing preventative measures. So that's equity and racial justice, and that's the name of our office, right? So I mentioned that the office was created out of 2020. On the screen, you'll see a couple of pictures. You see one person holding up, Asian is not a virus, racism is, right? That's due to the rise in Asian Pacific Islander hate crimes that was happening in 2020 due to the pandemic. There's an article on the screen about a guy wearing a KKK hoodie locally in one of our grocery stores. People were also had a person wear a swastika mask in some of the grocery stores. And then you had the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor. You know, all those things were happening during the pandemic. So our board wanted to do something substantive around equity and racial justice. So they decided to put $5 million in a pot of money and then also create this office without a whole lot of substance around what it's actually going to do, because they wanted us to co-create this office and the work that this office should do with the community, right? But I gotta tell you, right, it's 2020 didn't just tell us that this work was needed. You know, I think a lot of us knew that this work was actually being done in some areas like public health, in some places in our justice system, but it's also been needed in our entire organization and across government agencies for centuries, right? We've needed to really do this work and be deliberate about doing this work. So then we set out on co-creating the mission statement for the Office of Equity and Racial Justice. And I always like to read this mission statement out loud. We spent time co-creating it during the pandemic, during 2020, as you know, people were virtual and you know, and all that. We still had over 300 participants in community meetings, and people were really engaged in wanting to be a part of what this office could be. So here's our mission statement. San Diego County's Office of Equity and Racial Justice partners with community to co-create transformative, enduring structural and systemic change in San Diego County government. We bridge San Diego County departments and community voices to design bold policies and practices to advance equity. We champion belonging for all and advocate for people suffering from structural and systemic racism and exclusion. And as you can tell from this mission statement, these aren't words that we would typically be talking about in county government, right? Like co-creating policies and programs and procedures with the community. That's not just getting feedback, that's actually co-creating it with you, right? Policies and bold policies, but also advocating for and championing belonging for people suffering from structural systemic racism. And it's important words to say, but it's also important to put actions behind those words. So what don't we do, right, as the Office of Equity and Racial Justice? I think it's important for everybody to understand this too. So I'm not the diversity officer. I'm not the chief diversity officer for the County of San Diego. I'm not the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. We have a team in HR that does that work. Now we support them and do some work with them, but that's not our primary role. Diversity and inclusion is a part of the work that we do, but it's not the primary thing that we focus on. We're not the race police, right? We don't walk around giving people race tickets for discrimination and hate and bias. Although we do have people that call us all the time and they come in to our office and our employees ask us, you know, if they could file a complaint. We don't take those complaints. We're not the new EEOC reporting structure. There are things in place for that. You have the DA, you have our EEOC, you have the Office of Ethics and Compliance, you have our HR structure. But what we are intentionally doing is listening to those concerns. We're listening to find out if there are pockets of race discrimination, harassment that are happening in our organization, and then how do we address that working with our HR partners and some of the other folks in the county government. We're not the external discrimination or bias complaint folks. We don't get those complaints. And I'm also not the director of the Human Relations Commission, although we are the lead staff support for the Human Relations Commission, much like Todd Hood is for you all. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a little while. So on the screen right now is our organizational chart. We actually have grown since I came into this position. We started with 3 people. We started with myself and 2 group program managers, but we quickly realized with our budget equity work and with a lot of the requests that we were getting to really be weaved into the organization with the work that we do, that we need some team, we need some staff, we need some resources. So we've grown to 9 employees. We have 7 full-time employees, and we have 2 what we call management fellows. One management fellow is just started with us and is going to be our lead staff support for our Human Relations Commission because that needs a dedicated resource. But we have 3 equity impact managers that have their special projects and programs they work on. We also have just hired a deputy director to support us. And we also have a social equity program manager that we're going to be hiring for. And that's all about the program I'll mention later about addressing the harms that were done by the war on drugs and overcriminalization of marijuana. And really giving back into those communities and providing priority access to folks who've been criminalized by marijuana. So just talk a little bit about working with OERJ, Office of Equity and Racial Justice. So what are the things that we do? Well, one of the things that we do is we advise departments, right? We advise our support departments in their own swim lanes, right? So we don't want to take over housing. We don't want to take over CLRB. And I got to say, I support everything that Paul Parker's doing. I talk with Paul often. Paul is the real deal. He's a very genuine person, and he's really trying to make some systemic change. And one of those departments that I work closely with, and we advise him through the lens of equity and racial justice. And in other projects that we do and work on with things like the comprehensive improvement needs assessment, our capital program, right? Working families ordinance, anything that departments are really trying to do, any project or program they're trying to do could use a racial and equity justice lens and a sense of belonging lens across it by asking the right questions, right? Providing the right data analysis through that lens, getting them to talk to community organizations to really understand what the impact of those actions might be, and then helping them craft equity impact statements for all of their projects that go to the board for approval. So our board can actually take a look at and see what the equity impacts are based on the analysis that the department has done. We're also responsible for really leading the internal culture change through this lens of equity, belonging, racial justice, right? So what does that mean? That means providing those training resources, really defining what anti-racism is for our organization and providing training, resources, a strategy. We rolled out what we call a targeted universalism training to our employees last year. And it's all about making sure that we're addressing the structures that people reside in, but also understanding the equity point, right? That people show up in these structures differently. So people need different things as they show up in these structures to thrive, right? Just like going into a building and there not being any elevators, there's only stairs, or there's no way for somebody in a wheelchair to get to the second floor. Well, you got to address that structure because the equity principle will tell you that everybody needs something different, right? So that's what targeted universalism is all about. And we also want to codify this work by developing our administrative policies, right? And including things that the budget equity tool, our targeted universalism principles, and what it means to be an anti-racist organization into our admin policies. So it's there regardless of who's in these positions to make these decisions. And then lastly, we have special projects in our office, right? That really we try to address regional and systemic and structural issues that we impact from the county. One of them is a Boys and Men of Color initiative. Then that's all about eradicating the school to prison pipeline, supporting organizations that are already working to do that work, funding them, but also looking for gaps, right? And thinking about all across the life course of an individual's life, where are those intersections into that school to prison pipeline from kindergarten all the way up to job readiness programs. Community violence interrupters, which is all about supporting community members who are responding to violence, gang violence specifically, and helping them to mitigate escalations of those gang violence. We just got approved at the board at the last board meeting, a community equity impact fund that our office is going to lead and actually take $2 million out of our budget to put in the hands of small nonprofits that are boots on the ground doing this work with as little red tape as possible, right? But also provide capacity building to help those organizations grow and thrive as they're doing the work on the ground for equity and racial justice. And then lastly, I mentioned our social equity program for commercial cannabis already. And this is actually a real solid opportunity to take tax dollars that we get from cannabis, right, and reinvest it in those communities that were really devastated by the war on drugs and overcriminalization of marijuana, but also to really reinvest in the people who were criminalized by it and help them get on their feet to be successful in life. So last thing I just want to mention, and I'll show you the HR, the Human Relations Commission, there's a couple of ways I think that our office could work with your committee. We don't want to take over the staff support from Todd because he's doing a great job. But we do want to get your advice as we develop these equity action plans for each one of our departments, right? Through the lens of persons with disability. And I heard a lot of things today about, what you wanted, what should happen in the sheriff's department. And that's the type of analysis we want to happen on the purchasing and contracting department, right? Because each department is going to have equity action plans, and you want to make sure that lens of persons with disabilities is placed on that. So we'll be coming back to you all in the future to see how we could best get your advice on what that looks like moving forward. And the second thing is is I know there was a big concern about the Human Relations Commission not including persons with disabilities in their selection criteria when they were selecting members for the HRC. And I brought that up to the chair of the HRC. I gave her a heads up that that's something we want to make sure we take care of in this next round of HRC members. We actually have 7 vacant seats right now. We have, and 4 of those are youth seats, and 6 of them are appointed by the board appointed seats, but 1 of them is a Human Relations Commission appointed seat. So I think it's important for us to get a representation from this commission or from this community, right? Or somebody who advocates for this community. So my recommendation to you all would be to maybe propose a recommendation to the chair of the HRC of somebody you would recommend to be appointed to the HRC, either from this commission or voted on and approved by this committee. So I think that would be a good opportunity to have some a good representation at the HRC from this community. And then lastly, the HRC, like I mentioned, it's a 31-member seat commission. 24 are seated at this time. We have 6 subcommittees that are all working to implement their strategic plan that they rolled out earlier this year. So with that, I know we're at 3:35. I want to make sure I pause and allow enough time for questions.
Hi, this is Carolyn. I'm just curious if the HRC or the OERJ has a disabled veteran on their board or within their structure.
They do have a disabled veteran on their committee, on the commission, but it's not a formal position. If you know, if I can say that right, it's not a formal seat.
Does the OERJ have a disabled veteran?
I am a disabled veteran.
Employee. Ah, fantastic.
Yeah, 9-year hospital corpsman in the United States Navy, and I have my disability. So yes, I am.
I'm sorry, you went to the Navy. No, just kidding.
Hey, I work with the Marines. Come on now.
I was Army. I appreciate you.
I'm sorry.
IRS, Dad.
Don't make me have to intervene in this.
This inter-service love. Come on now.
Yeah,
Todd,
my sister was Army and my dad was Air Force, 20 years. So we spread the love.
My dad was Army. My grandparents were Marines.
Were there other questions, Michelle? I think I heard you asking a question.
No, I was just actually checking if that was Andrew speaking or if that was someone else from our committee. From the committee, do we have any immediate thoughts? Because I know we always come back with stuff, Andrew, so I'm giving you pre-warning. Are there any immediate questions that are coming up?
I have a question. This is Jessica.
Go ahead, Jess.
Hi. I did have to switch from the computer to my phone again because of my vision issues, but so hopefully I didn't miss anything that addresses this question. I'm wondering if there are any media or examples of hate crimes against persons with disabilities within the equity and racial, sorry, I don't have the name of the organization you're with off the top of my head, and I don't have it in front of me, but are there any examples of disability hate crimes or public disability issues or anything related to disabilities within the context of the ethics and racial justice group that you're part of conversation?
And thank you for that question, Jessica. And so I'm not, our office does not track hate crimes. The district attorney does. But we haven't, that's a really interesting question. I have not been involved in any conversations around hate crimes with persons with disabilities. And I think that that's something that I want to bring back to the Human Relations Commission to consider as well, because as a part of the strategic plan, one of the things that the HRC will be doing is promoting how to report hate crimes and, and what that looks like and what that process is. And I think it's important to consider that as well. Persons with disabilities and potential hate crimes against them, this community as well, as we consider that.
Yeah.
And the other thing, as far as the we work really closely with our employee resource groups at the County of San Diego, and we do have what we call a diverse ability employee resource group. And that employee resource group, and Todd, you probably already presented on or told them about it, but they are highly in tuned to needs of county employees and what the needs are of this organization and outside of the organization when you're talking about persons with disabilities. So we definitely plan on working closely with them to make sure they're included in our strategic plan and the work that we're going to be doing.
I really appreciate that. There does seem to be a real deficiency in hate crime reporting, as well as hate crime charges in terms of local law enforcement. I know the Department of Justice has put out several publications in which they discuss the lack of disability equity and inclusion in the justice system. And so I think that if your group and the other groups associated with your group can also make a commitment towards looking at equity and hate crimes with regards to persons with disabilities, I think that that could be really beneficial for the disability community at large. There is a website in Carlsbad called Carlsbad Wow. It's an Instagram site, and it's essentially a person taking pictures and writing hateful and violent comments about some of our most disabled homeless individuals. And so far, the Carlsbad Police Department hasn't been willing to take any responsibility. Instagram hasn't been willing to take any responsibility. And I've often asked some of my peers in the partner organizations I'm part of, such as ACLU, NAACP, North County Racial and Justice Committee, if this type of site were up and these types of comments were being made towards persons of color, what would the response be? And the answer across the board is outrage and action. And it's surprising and confusing to me that crimes against persons with mental health disabilities and hate speech and calls to violence are somehow still allowed to perpetuate. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed virtually meeting you and hearing you speak, and I hope that we can have you back and work with you more in the future.
And thank you for that, Jessica. And I don't know if there's I just Googled Carlsbad Wow, but if anybody has that and would like to send me a link to that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's Instagram. It's an Instagram handle, Carlsbad Wow.
Or
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If they put it in the chat, maybe that would be helpful for him.
Yeah, I can't. I'm off my computer, but if anyone can fill it in.
I can find it. Thanks. I think I can find it now. I know it's an Instagram, but thank you very much.
Okay. I'll let you social media types deal with that. This is Michelle, and I do appreciate that people are saying their names. I do know who's talking when I would like to tailgate onto that. I think Jessica's point is really important, and just bear in mind that very often people themselves will not either admit their own disabilities, or there is self-hatred. So that, that also informs how they report or speak about what has happened to them, or even see it. And I know you're very aware of this, Andrew. So I'm trying to say that I think that tagging along with Jessica's point is the point within the disability community, which is the same as in many other disenfranchised communities, of feeling that, oh, I'm not that important, or I don't want it to be that, or all of the things that society has created. So just bear that in mind, that this, that even when you're looking for it, you may have to go a little bit deeper than just, has anybody reported that they, are disabled and that they got whatever, harassed in whatever way. It may have to be that, some other way to actually be able to, realize it, that, oh, this, because they may easily not define it as a hate crime. Yet that may be very much what it is. So I will bring up one more thing that did come up with our committee, which I know you had nothing to do with, but it had to do with the excuse that the human relation, that Andrew Potter's department had for why they sent the survey out without including disabilities. And the excuse was, well, the Human Relations Commission had sent out a survey and they didn't include it, which obviously was a stupid reason for an excuse. I mean, just because someone did it and they did it wrong doesn't mean that you get away with it because they did it wrong. So
Michelle?
Yes.
I have, I just received it. It was great that you brought that up. I just received an update. We issued the, what Michelle is talking about, for those that may not have been on the call, the last call, is a demographic survey that was issued by the clerk of the board for boards, commissions, and committees. The solution, or maybe not solution, but an action that was determined in the last meeting was that the Office of Ethics and Compliance would conduct a supplemental survey for types of disabilities. And we don't have the results thus far from the Office of evaluation, and just received that there are 134 survey responses, and the average time to complete the survey is about 3 minutes and 41 seconds. So we have requested, as of I think it was the 5th of September, we issued that out. We'll have a reminder go out to the boards commission, to the appointees on boards, commissions, and committees, and that'll be in the middle of next week, with a deadline of September the 23rd. And when I say deadline, that'll be the time we'll have to pull results so that we can include those results in the October 11th board report that I'll be making. And if everyone is good at this point with what Andrew has presented, I would like to spend about 5 minutes going in to share the findings. We did this in last meeting, but I know there were several people that weren't here, but I won't go all through all the details, because you can look at the recording for all the details. But one of the items in the board letter is to get comments from the committee or the any advisory committee comments. So I would like to, I don't know the best way to get advisory committee comments, but I would like to, as I mentioned, take just a few minutes to go into the recommendations and some of the high level findings, if that is okay with you, Michelle.
Yeah, Andrew.
Sorry, you're breaking up, Michelle.
You-
In case we lose you, I
Okay,
did
now-
put my contact information in the chat, so feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call if you have any questions or want to chat.
But would you be willing to come back for actual?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Also, found out that we were losing, obviously, some of our members for the quorum, which I know you're getting shifted, but I'm basing this on my feeling of your flexibility. So I am asking if you'd be willing to come back and let us go on for the emergency of Todd, because what you run and who you are and how you work within the county is very important and very integral to our committee.
Absolutely. Just let me know when and we'll work it out with Todd and we'll make sure we get a good time to come in. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Andrew.
All right. Thank you for the time, y'all. Have a good weekend.
Okay, Todd,
Thank you.
you're on.
Okay, so as I mentioned, this is an example of the presentation that we will make to the board. This we're still making some updates to it, but just wanted to share. Let's see if I can get it to advance. Okay. So we have the background about the board letter, and then our working group that we established with various individuals across the county. We established a community engagement webpage where we have the notices posted and links to different advisory boards, commissions, and committees, as well as San Diego resources for people with disabilities. One of the, and that came up as a request from some of our survey information that we had received. But just a little bit about the promotion, how we promoted the community engagement through email and social media postings. And then as well, similarly with the survey, and we promoted the survey as well. Here were some of the responses that we got. We had 469 respondents from the survey. 34% stated that they have a disability, and 63% have a disability and or are a caregiver of someone with a disability. So we felt that was the sweet spot, because they have some direct experience with working with county departments. We also recognized there were some, maybe not surprises, but after we saw the results, it made sense. From a finance and general government group perspective, some of the departments that were most used were registrar of voters, the assessor, recorder, county clerk for marriage license, birth certificates, etc., treasurer, tax collector, the communications office, and human resources. There were others, but these were the leading. And then from a health and human services agency, aging and independent services, including the in-home supportive services, IHSS, behavioral health services, self-sufficiency services with the family resource centers, housing and community development, public health services, as well as medical care services. And that was within health and human services. The leading areas within, or departments within, land use and environment were parks and recreation and library. And then within public safety group, emergency medical services, animal services, and sheriff. So with that, we have now involved each of those departments. We made sure that those departments are providing input and getting input from or getting exposure, and making sure that they are aware of the issues and concerns and considerations of people with disabilities. One of the recommendations is to have the Committee for Persons with Disabilities, just as you all have been meeting with other areas, but to meet with those areas and hear their operations, hear about their operations, and then as well share considerations for people with disabilities with them and make advisory to those areas, especially those departments that where your committee has not been involved with, such as we mentioned, treasurer, tax collector, assessor, recorder, et cetera. So that's one item of area of opportunity. So another set of questions that we had were around how do you learn about services, programs, and activities, and how do you prefer to learn about services, programs, and activities? We saw a lot of consistency, but there were some areas where preferences were greater than the current areas where people learn. And some of those distinctions were the website. More people would prefer to learn by the website than who are currently using the website. And some of the background that we got was to make the website more user-friendly and more accessible. There is an initiative that's working on the county's website. So that's an area of opportunity, and I think an area where the committee might be able to hear about the re-engineering of the website and then be able to provide some input. Another area was more people learn about services, programs, and activities from family and friends than they would prefer to learn. So the number that responded that they would prefer to learn from family and friends was lower than the number of people who have learned from family and friends. So, and I think some of the background that we saw there was that it's from an independence perspective, but they also did want to learn from professionals. They wanted to learn from case managers, their navigators, caregivers, community-based organizations, and their healthcare providers. But there were also some technology people. A greater number of people wanted to learn more from online media, from social media, from apps, using mobile apps as well. So that was something. And then as well, how to access services, programs, and activities. And actually, this is where the mobile app was. The number that would prefer to access was far greater than the number who access. So we're looking at working with departments to let that information be known and to see where the departments might be able to provide, again, meeting people where they are. And you'll see in mobile, in-person mobile services, that was greater preference than the number of people who already access. So there's to know more about where the mobile office is, the Live Well mobile office, the Bookmobile, et cetera, and then other opportunities for mobile services. I do know that there are some departments that are using the Live Well mobile bus to use outreach as well. So these are some of the findings around how do you access services, programs, and activities, and how do you prefer to access. I know we're tight on time, and I want to give opportunity for input and questions, but let me just breeze through real quickly here. Difficulty finding information. We saw that, yes, there are more people that there's more people that believe it's difficult to find information, but the most valuable information to know is what they've found that made it difficult to access. And the theme here was that they couldn't find out what was available. They didn't know where to go or who to call or who to ask for. And it took a while to find the information. Those were the greatest theme. So we want to make sure that we're providing, there was a request for a sort of one-stop shopping. Well, that's a little tough to do, but it would be better to be able to have, and 211, the county uses 211 as a referral base. So if you have issues, contact 211, and then they will be able to provide more direction. But we also want to give that there were questions about making sure that the people who are answering the phone know they have the expertise and they are trained. So that was a great theme. Here we saw that as related to requests for accommodations, we found that a great number of people have not requested for accommodations. And the responses back was that they didn't know. They didn't know they could. So we want to make sure that departments are aware of accommodations that they can make for people with disabilities, and that the community knows. So we publicize those. So some of what we're doing is related to the board letter request, and that was to establish a listing of what resources have been put into place for people with disabilities. So we're working on that listing, and we'll be providing that listing to the Board of Supervisors the end of this month, and we'll be adding that into this, we'll be adding a reference about that into this, this board presentation. We did find that there is some satisfaction for those people who did request accommodations, that there is some satisfaction, but there is a great amount of opportunity for greater satisfaction. So we're looking for, we're expecting that by giving more focus on the processes for requesting accommodations and more information about accommodations available, that we'll get those numbers up. But this one great thing is that this serves as a baseline for us. So here are some of the key recommendations, and I wanted to, I know we're past time, but I wanted to just share these. What I will do is I will send these out to the committee, and these recommendations out to the committee, and I'd like to get your input so that we can share that as part of the board letter. But just to speak to it, staffing for accessibility support, including the CPD, this committee for persons with disabilities. I have to admit, from when I started in November 2019 to today, and this committee, we have your committee has become much more active. Instead of meeting every quarterly, which is part of the charter, or the fact sheet was to have quarterly meetings. You've gone to monthly meetings. You've even had special meetings. We've gotten great amount of departments presenting to you. So we want to continue that build out. To also look at board, commission, and committee appointees, to review policies and procedures for accessibility awareness opportunities, enhancing our employee training so that they are comfortable providing services with clients and customers with access and functional needs, and then to promote the Committee for Persons with Disabilities across the county departments, as well as to the public. And then reporting, as I mentioned, on those accessibility enhancements, that report that I mentioned, this that we'll be providing this month, at the end of the month. So again, I will share these in an email with you, and then be able to look for some input from the committee regarding those recommendations. Thank you so much.
Todd, when are you bringing this back to the board?
October the 11th is our target time.
Okay. Was there any, obviously that's in less than a month or about, okay, I can also check in with people because that will be after our next meeting. Is that correct?
No, it will be before our next meeting, because that's on October 14th.
Okay. I guess we could have acted on this a little. They didn't leave you much time because I know initially you were going to do it in August, and that was why there was all that rush. And then I thought there was going to be some more time for you to go back out with the surveys, but it sounds like that was not a part of the conversation. It was just more time. I thought that was the reason for delaying it was mainly from our committee. What I heard was concern that the survey period had only been open for 3 weeks, and it wasn't enough time for us to be able to get word out to different organizations to try to get members responding to it.
Oh, the committee that or the survey that that we talked about after in your committee meeting was the board's, commissions, and committees survey.
No,
This-
I understand.
Okay,
I
got
understand
it.
that difference.
Yes.
That's the one that Andrew Potter put out to all of them that asked that they wanted to know my income and my gender and my race, but they didn't care about the disabilities. It was only like 5 questions. I understand that is a supplement to that survey, and that was an easy fix. And I appreciate that they're doing that, but I'm talking about this much more important survey, which like I didn't get to fill out. I didn't know that there was a time limit on it. Jessica didn't get to fill it out, and I certainly didn't have time to go to other disability groups, which I would have done, to get them to fill it out, because that was being only open for 3 weeks. I don't even know how long the Andrew Potter thing was open, but I know that this survey that you have talked about, that your working group did in response to Nora Vargas's board letter, was only open for 3 weeks, because you've said it more than once. But when Michael Vu was on, I thought the idea was to, instead of you guys responding back by the end of August, to give him more time, so we actually had time to get the links out in different community organizations. Was that not?
So Michael Vu's statement was to create a new survey for the boards, commissions, and committees that would include disability status. That was Michael Vu's recommendation.
Right, that's true for one part of the problem. Agree. Do you not sound to the rest of the committee, or there were 2 that our committee had. One was that the board and commissions were not asked. The boards and commissions, 100 of them, were not asked about their disability. Simple. There was a simple and that you guys took care of that. The part of it was that we weren't happy with the long standing, that this report initially, correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to bring back to the board at the end, and he asked that it get delayed. There was time to get feedback. Wrong about that timing? Am I wrong about it initially was scheduled for you back in August?
We have a recording for the meeting. I'm pretty sure that's on the recording for the meeting.
Okay. Is that your initial, was it back at the end of August?
So it sounds like you're breaking up.
Oh. And I'm gonna take a chance and go back outside. I didn't want to lose charge. This
Well,
wireless.
if you turn your camera off, that'll give you more bandwidth.
Is it my camera off?
No.
Oh, then that changed because it was off. That was originally what I did.
Well, I know that we're at 11 after, and I know I extended our meeting. It's back. Okay, now you're off, Michelle.
Yeah, this is Sherry. I need to get going, but thank everybody. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you,
Bye,
Sherry.
Sherry.
I am going to let Jessica speak because honestly, I think this conversation has more to do with Todd and Katie. And yes, you can definitely bring it back up as one of our first items for our next meeting because I think I know where you're going with it. Just in terms of the time urgency. My concern, Todd, was just, I believe that the reason we were delaying this report back to the board was because we wanted to give it a chance to go back out into the community. Initially, you were going to do this report back, I believe, at the end of August.
Yes, I'll Michelle, for the in the interest of time, I will send you the link and I'll queue it up to where it is, and I'll send you the link for that discussion, and then you'll be able to, that might clarify it.
Okay.
And I'm happy just
Jessica,
to bring up my question and have us discuss it at the next meeting and just kind of give the committee an understanding.
Okay.
So today I clicked on, actually I did a Google search for Committee for Persons with Disabilities, and I was thrilled to see that we come up very quickly in the search engine optimization, which is a big change from where we were a couple of years ago. So that was exciting. And then I clicked on the member roster, and I noticed that a number of us with disabilities are not listed as disabled. Let me look on it right now. Let's see. So the people who are listed as disabled are Candace, Kay, vacant, District 3.
Jessica.
Vacant, District 4, myself,
Jessica.
and that's it. Yes.
I don't think it. Well, I'm certain of it. That's not describing the individual. That's actually describing the charter that said that at least 50% of the committee appointees would be, so they, in order to do that, they said one of each district, you'd have to have at least one of each district be a person with disability. So it really describes that seat and not the person.
Okay, well, right now we have it looking quite odd, and I would like to actually bring up changing that. I mean,
We can
I
get with,
find-
we can definitely get with the clerk of the board. If, just definitely, you can send that to Katie and I, and
okay.
we'll work with the clerk of the board to see what can be reflected on that.
Okay,
Katie, and just to clarify, because this question did come up before, and Jessica, I went back through my emails. The clerk of the board did state that the Board of Supervisors would have to approve that change, just for reference.
Okay, well, I'm happy to go to them and advocate for the change. I just find it very strange that there's only 3 of us with disabilities labeled. I don't know if anyone wants to weigh in, but if so, we can do so in the next meeting.
Well, what do they have as District 4?
District 4, it has Carolyn labeled as a San Diego resident, and the vacant position is labeled as a disabled position. And same with District 3.
Hang on, Carolyn shouldn't be District 4. District 4 is Nathan Fletcher.
Oh, I'm sorry. It said seat 4. I meant District 2. My bad.
So I'm asking about District 4.
Michelle,
District
list you as
4
San Diego
says-
resident.
And yeah, so you're listed as a
And a
resident, and then the,
vacant.
thank you, vacant spot is disabled.
Okay. So yeah, let's
So
work that.
again, in the interest of timing, if you, we can work on again, it's not describing the person, it's describing the seat. It sounds like the clerk of the board assigned people without two certain seats, without knowing their disability, or without assigning them to a seat for a disabled person or what have you, then we'll be able to work with that. That's an accounting. I mean,
Yeah, I thought that we had agreed that we were going to have our bios on here somewhere. Yay or nay?
So Katie, I know we got their bios.
Yeah, we wrote
Are
bios.
have those been approved by the committee?
So we don't have true bios. There was the question about, so everybody responded to 2 questions about the committee, and Michelle from Moad from Communications had worked on putting together an insight article to describe the committee and introduce them to county staff on Insight. But we had not yet talked about like actual bios explaining who each of you are and what your history is.
I see.
Okay, I just wanted to address that, and we can discuss it.
Yeah, or maybe we can print what people wrote related to answering the 2 questions, at least as a start.
Yeah, I mean, most people's responses were, just 2 sentences or so. They were pretty brief. So I don't know if that's how you all want to list it, or if you want to do a true bio with your experience and history.
Let's put that on next month's agenda. Jessica?
Yes, thank you.
Next.
I'm not going to take any time to discuss reimbursement today. I'll bring it up next meeting.
Well, do you want to just bring it up so that people have a chance of what you had?
Okay, I mean, when I saw that, I didn't realize that really we even had any ability to be reimbursed, but I'm guessing probably the least income person in the group. I'm on Social Security disability to the tune of a little over $12,000 a year. I'm on an iPhone 7 that's 5 years old and no longer has a functional operating system. It can't use Zoom functionally. I also have a Chromebook that's 6 years old, and I got a notice that in the next month it won't be compatible with Zoom. And I obviously don't have the income to purchase a new device, which may end up leaving me in a position to not be able to fully participate in our disability committee meetings. So I made a request that I be able to be reimbursed for a device that allows me to fully participate in the meeting. And I mean, I believe that the response is either, no or going to be no, based on the fact that it doesn't look like we're even going to be able to be reimbursed for trips to locations to do committee business. But I would like to address that because it does disallow me equal access and opportunity, and it is based on me being a person with a disability on a disability income. And so I would like to bring that to conversation at the next meeting.
Okay, we can add that. I don't know who else is left on the line.
Jeanette's here.
Okay,
We still have Rakina, Jeanette, Jessica, Jose, Michelle, and Todd.
okay. So what I also will personally do, Jessica, is I know there are programs out there. I believe some of them are free. I know they're definitely heavily discounted, like Futures, San Diego Futures, for getting technical equipment, but there might be some that are free. That one is heavily discounted. So, and maybe other people in our group will also be aware of programs that can, that might be able to help. And I will be asking around.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
If there's not anything else that's time urgent, I will, it was a good meeting. It was hefty, but it was a lot covered. I do think you'll appreciate hearing back from Andrew Strong. And it sounds like we haven't heard anything from the Sheriff's Department about coming out to deal with the front end when they first have an encounter with someone. Is that correct? Katie or Todd? We haven't
Still
heard
in
any-
process, still in process.
Yeah. All right, if there's nothing else urgent, I'm gonna go ahead and close the meeting at, what time is it?
4:22.
Well, I meant 4:22. Have a safe weekend. We did get the rain, and oh my God, it changed the heat, at least down where I live.
You too. It's been wonderful.
Yes, and people are like complaining about the rain this morning when I went out, and it was like, oh my God, I am so thankful for the rain. So enjoy
Have a
your
great
week.
weekend, everybody.
Yeah.
Be safe, everyone.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Take care. See you all
Thank you.
next month.